How to learn game dev in 30 days. That's what I typed into the YouTube search bar. I found a lot of videos, but they just weren't relevant to my situation. Most of the videos were aimed at people who already had computer science degrees, or people who were trying to get into a game development company. But that's not what I was looking for. I wanted something that would take me from complete zero to being able to develop my own games. Even if it's starting with something as simple as Pong, Flappy Bird, or Asteroids. I couldn't find a guide to learn game development quickly, so I decided to make a guide for myself. I followed 3 steps and used 3 free resources to learn game development. I learned it in 30 days. However, if I could go back in time and redirect myself, I think I could have done it in 2 weeks. The 3 steps are, no surprises. 1, learn programming. 2, learn the specific programming language. And 3, learn the game engine. At the end of the video, I'm also going to do an hourly breakdown of how long it took me to do each step so that you can calculate how long it's going to take you. Step 1 is to learn programming. I highly recommend CS50 by Harvard University. Amazing course, and what's actually really cool is that they release a new version every year. You can switch over to another year and watch the same lecture with different examples and slightly different assignments. This is a 3-month course. However, we are going to simplify it a little bit because we don't want to completely learn computer science. We just want to learn the basics so that we can get started making our first game. So what you're gonna do is start with week 0. You're gonna learn all the basic concepts. Then you're gonna move on to week 1, where you start learning your first programming language, C. In week 2, you learn all of the basics, and these basics are so powerful that you're gonna use them in basically every program or game you write. And they're so powerful, in fact, we can actually kind of stop right here. Now, I did go on to weeks 3, 4, and 5, but those 3 weeks took me at least twice as long as the previous 3 weeks. They are just so difficult. I actually can't say they were useful to me yet. For making basic games, these actually aren't applicable yet. So you can skip these guilt-free. I would just recommend watching the lectures and letting the ideas kind of sit and ferment in your mind. Then we're gonna just go ahead and jump to week 6. So week 6 is where all the magic happens because this is where you learn Python. Python is incredibly powerful because it's so simple and intuitive. This is gonna be a huge confidence boost too. So this is where we're gonna stop learning programming and we're gonna move on to the next step. The reason why we want to stop here and not continue learning, there's actually a reason for that, not just time-based, but I think that overlearning is actually a really big problem. As a hobby, I do language learning, so I've learned Japanese, I've also practiced Chinese and Korean, and I studied French for 4 years in the public school system. I think a lot of us have this experience where we study, but we can never actually learn how to speak the language, and we can't have any kind of conversation, any functional conversation in the language. It's just a matter of the input versus output you have. If you start outputting and practicing real conversations from your first lesson, that's going to have a huge impact on the way you continue to learn language. I also studied Japanese on my own for about 2 years before actually going to Japan. And in my self-study, I focused entirely on grammar, writing, reading, and vocabulary. So when I actually got to Japan and I realized I couldn't speak, it was just not only incredibly demotivating, but I realized that I also had to completely start from scratch and learn conversation from 0. And I'm foreseeing that this could also be a problem in programming too, if I learn all these new concepts, but I never practice them. You know, all these concepts and ideas are just going to be sitting in my head without any connection to the real world or without any muscle memory of how to use them. So skipping a bunch of lessons, I think is going to be a win-win. And you're going to see that with just the basics, you can do a lot more than you think. All right, so let's move on to step 2. Step 2 is to learn your programming language. Before you learn your programming language, you need to decide which engine you're going to go for. In the game development world, it seems like C++ and C# are kind of the standards, but I really like the feel of Python. So if you also enjoy programming in Python, I think that you should go ahead and follow that. One option would be to continue learning Python and go down the path of Pygame, which is a game engine that uses Python. Or you can follow the path I did, which was to learn GDScript and continue on the path to learning the Godot Game Engine. GDScript is almost entirely identical to Python, so you're gonna have a really easy time learning this. Python and GDScript are incredibly readable languages, so it just feels more effortless to program in it. So this is the program I use to learn GDScript. The website is called GDQuest. It's a 27 module course. It's very interactive, very visual. You're really gonna enjoy your time here. So next, let's move on to step 3. This is where I learned Godot. This was the most difficult step for me. And I think the reason for that is because I didn't have a clear idea of which resource I should use. Unfortunately, Godot doesn't have as many tutorials as some of the other popular game engines. And I think the reason for that is Godot is a relatively new engine, and specifically the version Godot 4 has only been around for about a year. I spent a lot of time sifting through tutorials, trying out different videos on YouTube, but I just couldn't find the right one. So I just dove in and tried to make my first game. I made Pong, or at least I tried. This was actually a complete failure. I realized that I didn't have enough knowledge yet to be able to make my game. My main problems were that I didn't know how to use the Godot interface well. I didn't know how to take advantage of the nodes. And also, very simply, I didn't know how to structure a game. In the tutorials I watched, even though they were labeled for beginners, it seems like most of the beginner tutorials on YouTube are not actually aimed at true beginners. They're kind of aimed at upper beginners, or perhaps maybe aimed at people who know a little bit more programming. I took the shortcut, so that's understandable. But after that failure, I actually knew exactly what I needed to do. You see, as I was searching for tutorials, one video in particular kept popping up in my search and in my recommendations, but I avoided clicking on it. And when I show you the thumbnail, I think you're gonna see why. This video was absolutely 100% what I needed, and it is hands down the best Godot tutorial on YouTube. So let me show you the thumbnail. This is the ultimate guide to Godot by ClearCode, and you see the thing that was scaring me off? This video is 12 hours long, but it's perfect. It's literally perfect. The YouTuber ClearCode is an excellent teacher. He shows you how to use the interface, how to structure your game. He shows you all sorts of different features. He shows you how to use nodes, how to set up an interface for your game. He shows you how to use particles, tile maps, everything and more that you could have imagined. And the best thing about this guide is that it's actually for true beginners. So this guide is actually perfect for us, and I highly recommend completing this. Unfortunately, I was trying to do a 30-day challenge, and I found this video only a few days before my time limit was up. So I actually didn't finish the tutorial. I only got to about hour 6 or 7, but it was enough. After 30 days of learning game dev, I stopped learning and I just jumped into Godot and I made my first game. It took about 5 days to actually complete the game, but I got it up on itch.io and I felt really good about it. It took me 30 days, but I think that was because I didn't have a lot of direction. Now, if you follow these steps without hesitation, you can actually do this much quicker than I did. So let's take a look at the hourly breakdown. So for step 1, CS50 all in all took me about 2.5 weeks. But if you just do weeks 0, 1, 2, and 6, week 0 took me about 6 or 7 hours. Week 1 took me about 8 hours. Week 2, the same, 8 hours. And week 6 also took me about 8 hours. When I learned GDScript, it only took me about 8 hours, just one day. When learning Godot, I spent a lot of time in tutorial hell. I think I wasted a full week here. If you go straight to the ClearCode tutorial, I think that's a much better option. Now this guide is a monster, right? 15 hours. Doing the tutorial is going to take you 2 to 3 times as long. So if you want to go through the entire guide, expect to spend between 30 and 45 hours doing this. So if you're trying to make a time frame for yourself, you need to set aside about 80 to 100 hours. I highly recommend doing long sessions rather than trying to learn in 10 minutes a day. Learning 10 minutes a day just doesn't work for learning difficult things. If you try to learn a language in 10 minutes a day, you're never going to reach your goal. And your brain just doesn't get the opportunity to immerse. I used to think that game development was just for geniuses or people who studied 4 years for their computer science degree. But I think in 2024, things are changing. Information is far more accessible than it used to be, and there are so many people out there sharing information and setting up communities. I never thought that I was smart enough to do this, but it's actually quite possible. I'm really excited for this year because even though I've already made 2 games, I know there's still so much left to learn. If you've ever dreamed of making your own games, you should just do it. Starting is not as difficult as you think.